Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special Spanish Loops podcast. Hola, Jorge.
Hola, Francisco. Very special.
Yes, today we are going to be talking about something that is kind of strange. What connects Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, NASA, and Spain?
What?
Well, let's get some music and let's discover all about it in a sec.
Okay. Okay, Francisco, since you mentioned that and while all this symphony was coming in, I was thinking, wait a minute. You need to tell me about it. I know I'm the one who's going to talk about it, but please.
It's your podcast.
Yeah,
Okay. So,
no, it's our podcast, but
uh,
explain here to the audience what's the relation
well,
in what you just said as an intro, please.
we have now all of these mega multimillionaires trying to reach Mars and the moon and back and forth and go up to space. But without a Spanish contribution, they would have never made it to space. So, Jorge, what are we talking about, or who are we talking about?
Yes, you are. You're right, Francisco. This is one of those things that, for some reason, is being cornered in the history of any race. In this case, a space race. And believe it or not, out there, you're gonna say, "Oh yeah, sure, of course," like every country. But no, this is out there. It's being kept not as a secret, but because things didn't work how the big corporations wanted to work with this person, which we will let you know in a minute who that person is. Everything is being like, placed in a secondary role, but everything is there, is recorded, and for us is kind of a pride feeling that we know that if it wasn't because of that contribution, probably somebody else would have come along with that invention. But in this case, it was a Spanish gentleman called Emilio Herrera Linares.
Okay, Emilio Herrera.
Mhm.
What did he do?
He was a Spanish engineer, aviator, and a scientist that designed,
Tan, tan, tan.
buckle up, buckle up, the first prototype of a space suit, the
Oh,
stratonautical suit. And it
when are we
was
talking about? What time?
1935,
1935.
long before NASA's missions and more than 30 years ahead of the astronaut suits that would later be used in space.
Okay, so what
This,
is the secret to the design?
yeah, this suit was conceived to ascending into the stratosphere, provided thermal insulation, oxygen supply, communications, and radiation protection, directly inspiring the later NASA designs and becoming a key precursor in the space race. Okay.
Ah, he's Spanish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about him. Do you have a little bit of his history, a little bit of his background?
Yeah, yeah. Before his history and background, let me, now that I mentioned about the space suits, everybody's gonna think, wait a minute, space suit. We have a kind of a picture when we think about it. But let me just tell you, if you don't mind, Francisco, at the very beginning, how was that prototype? Okay, the design of this prototype. It was
Mhm.
a multi-layer structure. It was wool, it was rubber, it was reinforced canvas with steel, and an outer silver layer to reflect heat. That is, a key. The mobility about that kind of suit. It was like an accordion-like system at the joints to allow movements.
Okay.
Helmet, it was made of steel with a triple glass and filters to protect against solar radiation. And the entire system included a microphone and control devices for breathing and communication. Okay, so what was the context of all this? And the objective, it was to prepare a stratospheric flight planned for 1936. Sadly, it was canceled due to the Spanish Civil War.
Okay. So it was Spain who wanted to send.
Yeah.
And stratospheric.
He was a pioneer. He was a multidisciplinary scientist, as I said, aeronautical engineer. It was a visionary, and he was a very good friend of Einstein. So he made huge contributions for that kind of exploration science project.
Wow.
But as I said, sadly um, the Civil War stopped all that. And the influence of all this is that his work was very fundamental and directly inspired the spacesuits later used by both the United States and the then USSR in their space programs.
Wow.
Remember that, and this is, I mean, you can find this anywhere, okay?
Okay.
That Emilio Herrera is recognized as a key figure in the history of aeronautics and space exploration, far ahead of his time, okay? Whose suits laid the foundations for human protection in space.
Hmm.
Yep.
Sounds quite a brain to me.
It sounds, it is, it was, a brain. Sadly, many factors happened. Spanish Civil War was the main thing. But anyway, let's get a little bit in your question that you mentioned before about who is this person? Where does he come from?
Okay.
He comes from Granada, okay?
Okay.
And he was born in February 1879. And he died in Switzerland, in Geneva, in September 1967. He was a Spanish military and aerospace engineer, as I said, aviator, a scientist. He was also a president. Listen to this. He was the president of the government of the Spanish Republic in exile.
Wow.
Now there is a foundation, the Emilio Herrera's Foundation, that is responsible for preserving his personal archive. What about his childhood and early years? Well, as I said, he was born in Granada, and he was part of a bourgeois family. One of his ancestors, and this is another huge big things, okay? One
Okay.
of his ancestors was the architect Juan of Herrera. He took part of the
Yeah.
design of the monastery of El Escorial for Philip II, like 4 centuries before what
Okay.
today is the pantheon of all the Spanish royalty.
Okay. So we're talking bourgeois with money, a lot of
Yeah,
money,
good family, a good
good
background
education,
background family. Okay,
background.
so during his childhood, Granada suffered three big catastrophes in a very quick or very short period of time. Granada had an earthquake on the Christmas Day in 1884 that devastated the city of Granada and part of the province as well. Uh, because of that, the floods of the river, one of the rivers that crosses Granada, destroyed a lot of more of the city. And then, as a consequence of that, it was a cholera epidemic. So all those three things together happened while he was a child. When he finished school, he began studying architecture, but he left those studies just to enter the Academy of Engineers in Guadalajara, not far from here, from Madrid, only
Northern
half an hour
Madrid.
away, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then he became a military.
Okay.
He completed the academy and graduated as a lieutenant in 1903 and took part in many scientific ascents, like observing a solar eclipse from a balloon over Burgos in 1905.
Wow.
Imagine how visionary it was. He wanted to get into a balloon up there and just watch the solar eclipse. And it was also in a sporting competition like the Gordon Bennett Cup in 1906 at the Paris Grand Prix, where he placed second. So, yep,
Okay. So he was a sportsman as well.
yep, that's well. That's true. Yeah. In 1909, he married and he joined the military aerostatic expedition supporting troops during the tragic Melilla War. Melilla is one of those Spanish territories in the north of Africa, but there were some guerrilla wars in those days, so he was there. And the same year, his son was born, who would later become a well known poet and novelist. So, after these military balloons were used in African campaigns, I mean, don't forget that they were, what's the word for those? I know it's balloons cautivos in Spanish. In the African campaigns, those balloons were limited to being tethered, that's the word, to the
Tethered.
ground. Tethered, yes,
Okay.
just tied to the ground, okay? And the army requested the first ones. So Herrera, who directed the aerostatic balloon section of Melilla, prepared territorial maps based on aerial photography, already held pilot licenses for both airplanes and airships. Very, very,
Early
basic
stages.
airplanes in those days. He was deeply interested in early airplanes, and believe it or not, he attended the Wright brothers exhibition. It was in Osborg's with his friend Alfredo, very close friend of him. So he was there when the
Wow.
Wright brothers came
And flew.
and flew. Yeah, well, going back with his life, in 1914, he made the newspaper headlines along the a fellow officer when they crossed, and this is something really important in aeronautical news or history. He crossed the Strait of Gibraltar by air. This flight from Tetuan, then in Africa, Spanish territory, to Seville was the very first flight ever made in between Europe and Africa. They
Wow.
landed in the outskirts of Sevilla in a town called Tablada, and it was in front of the presence of the king at the time, Alphonse XIII, who appointed Herrera gentleman of the chamber with activity duty.
Oh,
Okay.
sounds
He
fancy.
Yeah, very fancy. He also took part in the new military aviation campaign during the Reef War. The Reef War is also in north of Africa. Okay. Okay. From those years onwards, he focused in aeronautical studies and the technical part, the scientific part, the commercial part, and legal principles of all that. Um, he was sent to the United States in 1915 to purchase the Curtiss GN-4 Jenny aircraft and to establish Spain's first seaplane pilot school during World War One. While Spain remained neutral, he served on an area of several fronts. Going on with his life, in the still 1910s, he attempted to create a transoceanic airline for passenger transport called Transaerial Columbus,
Okay. Columbus.
paying homage to Christopher Columbus, to link Europe and the Americas using how you call the zeppelins, right? He uses
Okay.
zeppelins designed by the engineer and inventor, another one, Leonardo Torres, Spanish. Although the idea was ultimately realized by a German company, obviously, Herrera was invited with the rank of second commander and alongside another Spanish engineer aboard the Graf Zeppelin LZ-127, then the largest aircraft in the world. They crossed the Atlantic, flew over 2 million kilometers, and completed a circumnavigation of the entire globe.
Wow.
Yep,
I mean, this guy is very important for aeronautical history, not just in
absolutely.
Spain, but worldwide.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So, Jorge, what scientific upgrades or what is he famous for?
I mean,
Scientifically speaking.
what I did say is more than enough to be famous
Yes.
for, but he contributed to many other things. There is a chapter, I cannot remember what season and the number of a chapter, that we talked about the inventor of the helicopter. It was Juan de la Cierva,
Juan de la
Spanish one,
Cierva.
okay, the precursor of the helicopter, the modern helicopter. So in the 1920s, he assisted Juan de la Cierva technically with the invention of the very basic helicopter at the time, which was a hybrid aircraft combining features of airplanes and helicopters. He also took part of the construction and design of the aerodynamic, oh my God, what a word.
Technical word for us, aerodynamic.
Yeah, laboratory in the outskirts of Madrid. There is a tiny little airport now used for private use in the southwest of the city of Madrid. It's not the international one that we have now, which is Barajas. That's a different one. And it was the very first aerodynamic laboratory ever built in this country. By the way, believe it or not, at that time, we're talking about early 1920s, it housed one of the most advanced wind tunnels of its time and would later become the foundation of today's National Institute for Aerospace Technology. Okay.
Wow.
Another thing that he did was the research, a big research in the area of appropriate clothing and breathing system for high altitude flights, where lack of oxygen and extreme cold pose serious challenges. In 1935, he created the stratonautical suit, an autonomous suit for high altitude, balloon cruise, and a direct precursor for modern space suits. Later, he played a major role in the creation of the Higher School of Aerotechnics, becoming the first director and training Spain's first generation of aeronautical engineer. Now we're jumping into the 1930s.
Okay.
Okay, so he was leading already the figure in aeronautics, and the League of Nations appointed him as an international aviation expert. The League of Nations, we're not talking about a local institution. We're talking about the League of Nations appointing him as an international aviation expert. This was a very intense, active period in his life. In 1932, he represented Spain in this League of Nations. And the same year, he was elected by the Royal Academy of Exact Physical and Natural Sciences, officially joining in April in 1933 with a speech titled Science and Aeronautics. He also patented the slide rule designed to solve aerodynamic problems. After joining this academy, he presented his project for a balloon ascent to study the stratosphere using what he called the stratonautical suit, the direct ancestor of modern space suits.
So, I mean, how do you come with the idea of a suit to go all this high? Where did he get inspiration from? Where, I mean, I would love to be in that brain.
Oh well, he was a he was a brainiac, you know. Well, as I said, he was a engineer. A lot of titles that he had, but for this specific thing, he was inspired by a suit developed a few years before, precisely 1928, I think it was, by another engineer called Benito Molas, and he both cooperated, and they, was learning from the shortcomings. Herrera finalized his design in 1935, as I said, in the Aerostation Polygon workshops in Guadalajara, where he studied. Okay, and together in cooperation with that little airport, with the aerodynamic laboratory and the wind tunnel, the project included both a balloon capable of reaching 60,000 feet in altitude.
60,000, it's like 26,000 meters.
Correct.
Okay.
That's like almost 3 times the altitude of a commercial plane flying right now. almost 3 times. So I was just in, just in a balloon, and the first spacesuit, it was equipped with a microphone, anti-vapor breathing system, very, very important, thermometers, barometers, and tools to measure and collect samples.
Okay. So this prototype, I mean, obviously worked. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
So what did
absolutely.
it show to the people? I mean, that we could do it, that we could go to space, or
Well, I mean, excuse me. We're talking about the year 1935. Okay, as I told you, there was that big project that it was paralyzed when Einstein was involved into it because of the Spanish Civil War in 1936. But we have to think that several decades later, NASA uh, was basing this own spacesuit designs on Herrera's studies.
wow.
And up to the point that, as a gesture of recognition, the astronaut Neil Armstrong presented one of the moon rocks to Manuel Casajus Rodriguez, a collaborator of Herrera and NASA employee. So we all know that Neil Armstrong stepped over the moon in 1969, 2 years after Herrera passed away. This gentleman, Manuel Casajus, was the director of the Herrera's Foundation. So the first astronaut that stepped over the moon gave a moon rock to the institution and foundation of Herrera. The rock was displayed for many years in the Spanish Museum of Aeronautics and Astronautics. But guess what, Francisco?
Franco.
No,
No,
no, Franco,
no,
no. Franco,
no. That's his name.
uh, the rock's been missing since 2004.
It's been stolen.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Oh.
Nobody knows what happened, but it's not there any longer. Nobody knows where it is. And now, just to pay a very good homage to this gentleman, which is very little known for the general public. And I get the goosebumps when I talk about him because he was somebody. He was
Yeah.
somebody and deserves much more recognition for what he has. Look, when the Americans offered Herrera himself, when he was still alive, it was at the very beginning of the space race, a position in their space program with a blank check. Listen to this blank check. NASA went to Herrera saying, "Hey, we need you, and here is put the numbers that you want in this check." He asked that whenever the Americans would reach the moon, Spanish flag should be flown over the surface of the moon. Obviously, they told him that only the United States flag would fly there. Guess what?
What?
Herrera refused the offer to work directly for NASA.
Wow. Well, that's patriotism.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But well,
Imagine if he would have done it. Oh my God.
no, but I mean, even he hasn't done it. But imagine that brain that's so much advanced for the time. I mean,
Creativity.
designing a space suit in the 1930s, and because of internal problems that we had here in Spain, Civil War, everything was paralyzed. And like almost 30 years later, or 30 years later, here comes the NASA and the USSR trying to copy or trying to base their modern design in that suit that was designed 3 decades before. To me, that is, I have no words
Breathtaking.
for that.
Wow, Jorge, I
Seriously.
have learned so much today. I knew barely nothing about Emilio Herrera. To tell you the truth, the only thing I knew was like, okay, he was the one who invented the spacesuit. that's all I learned in school from him. So thank you so much for bringing so much to this podcast. I've learned
My pleasure.
a hell of a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you.
he
Thank you.
was
Thank you.
he was a good character. Good
Well,
character. Yeah. Yeah.
well, anyway, Jorge, anything
Yes.
else you want to add to this bunch of knowledge that you have given to us?
Little much. I mean, I could stay here for hours just
I
talking
know.
about every details exactly and what he did say, where he lived, etc., etc. But no, the only thing I just want to remember to all our listeners is first, thank you for your loyalty, staying there. Give us a thumb up. Remember that that is going to be an incredible amount of help if you just subscribe to our channel in any of the audio platforms. We are also in YouTube in our channel as Spanish Loops. In Instagram is the Spanish Loops podcast, all together, no spaces. Subscribe, share, talk to your friends to download the podcast. And if they got nothing better to do, at least you're gonna listen to these two crazy Spaniards talking about Spain and everything that Spain has contributed to the world. So, chicos, in advance, thank you so much. Francisco, thank you so much again for being there and your interest as well about this. And I've got nothing else to say except that I will see you next week.
Hopefully we'll see you next week. And Jorge, thank you so, so much. Amigos, have a wonderful week. See you next week.
Bye-bye. And as usual, we want to thank all our listeners for being there every week, letting us sharing our talks. Follow us in Spanish Loops in Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite platform.
And in Instagram, you can find us as the Spanish Loops Podcast, no spaces, all together. If you want to find us the quickest way, just Google Spanish Loops Podcast and you will find us. Hasta la vista, amigos.
See you next week.